Hey guys, I am here with my November DNFs, all those books that I did not finish. I do have a lot this month, 6 of them, but that was mostly because when I decided my TBR for the month of November, I chose all the books that were on my physical TBR shelf that I was the least excited about. And a lot of them were, I was not as excited because they were outside of my normal genre or the storyline or whatever. But for whatever reason, I was the least excited about them. And it turns out that I DNF'd every single one of those books that kind of fell into that category. And it's okay. I'm actually really okay with this. I had wanted to give them a chance. I gave them all at least 50 pages, and I did. A lot of them, they're just not for me. They were not bad, they just weren't for me. And that's really okay. I just wanted to give them a chance. And I did. And then I put them down, and I'm okay. So, because there are 6, let's go ahead and jump into them. Try to get through them as quick, well, not as quickly as possible, but relatively quickly. But the very first book that I DNF'd was John Scalzi. No, John Scalzi is the author. Fuzzy Nation by John Scalzi. This book is really a love letter to Little Fuzzy by H. Beam Piper. Essentially, the main character of Jack Holloway is on a planet. He is a surveyor, and he discovers this huge seam of minerals that he will be rich, right? And of course, this is all contingent upon this planet not being occupied by any sentient creatures. And it turns out there are. And he's the one that discovers that there are maybe sentient creatures. So now he's got to figure out what to do. I DNF'd this around page 50 because really there wasn't a ton of world building, which John Scalzi doesn't do a super huge amount of world building that I've seen in the books that I've read. So that's okay. And I knew that that was likely to be a thing, but I felt a little bit adrift because there was not quite enough world building for me. I didn't think that the plot sounded all that interesting, and it definitely didn't suck me in. I didn't really like the main character of Jack Holloway. He's kind of this morally gray character, which a lot of people like, and I kind of wanted him to be a do-gooder, if I'm being honest. He was more like, I'm gonna do the wrong things for the right reasons, and everything. And I was just like, oh man, that's just not really for me. And then the other part is he's a really lonely guy, and so he has a dog, and so it's just him and his dog. And so the interactions between him and his dog are about what you would expect from somebody, but I don't really like it. It's just not for me. So I got to page 50, and I said, yeah, this is not a book that I probably should have even tried to read, but I did. I read, like I said, I read the first 50 pages. I read the last 3. I felt really comfortable. I was good. That's all I needed. The next one that I DNF'd is Assassin's Gambit by Amy Raby, which is the first book in the Hearts and Thrones series. This is a romance. Our main character of Vidala, not really sure how to pronounce her name, is an assassin, and she has been trained as such since she was very young, and she is going to assassinate the emperor to start a civil war so that she and her clan essentially can regain some of their rights. She was and then of course she falls in love with the emperor. That's the romance part. She was chosen because she was apparently very smart, and we don't see any evidence of this. In fact, we see her doing things that I would categorize as not smart. So it's like, that doesn't actually really work. The other part is that this rebellion organization does not actually have enough intelligence to be carrying out this mission. There are times when she's like, I didn't know about this. And you're like, oh, that was something you probably should have known before you ever walked in that door. And then even later, a little bit later, she was just like, I'm not actually sure that an assassination would start a civil war. You should know that, especially because you're probably going to get caught and killed, executed. So maybe know before you just throw your life away, right? So that was not really great. Lucian, who is the emperor, is missing part of his leg, which is totally fine, except for the fact that it just felt kind of awkward and weird. Like, I would have expected him to have really complicated feelings about it. He was a soldier. He lost part of his leg on the front lines. This is a very physical kind of society where he would definitely be seen as not whole by other people. But like, so that would engender a lot of complicated thoughts and feelings and what am I now and all this kind of stuff. And we got none of that. There was just, I was like, it was brought up a lot, but like not in any kind of complicated, like it was just very strange. It was very strange. And then, so it's just like, I didn't love that. It's honestly just this beautiful train wreck. And if you're looking for a beautiful train wreck of a romance, this might work for you. It just didn't work for me, and I did DNF it at page 50. So the next one that I did not finish was Night Terrors by Tim Waggoner, the first book in the Shadow Watch series. This is a series where people, when they dream, they go to this place called the Maelstrom. And if you dream hard enough, if you dream long enough, your dreams can become reality, inclusive of your nightmares. And the Shadow Watch are the people that kind of take care of all that nonsense. We follow our main characters of Audra and her personal nightmare, Mr. Jinx, who is in fact a nightmare clown. And as they kind of go about their duties, taking care of these dreams that have come over into reality. This I thought was just not, this just wasn't for me. The first chapter is 40 pages long with no breaks, which I was not expecting and I did not appreciate. The first action sequence that we have is 64 pages long. And I don't mind action sequences. It's just unfortunate timing because like in the beginning, especially with like a fantasy, an urban fantasy, like a sci-fi, whatever, you kind of need to give enough world building and character development to anchor your readers. And we didn't really get that. We got little bits and pieces of character development and world building but it was just really not enough. And especially when you're considering that this is a 350 page book, like that's way too long to wait to anchor your audience. So I did not appreciate that. Like I said, this follows Audra and Mr. Jinx. Audra, we are actually telling that this story is being told from the perspective of Audra, but she is not nearly as well developed as Mr. Jinx, the nightmare clown. And yes, he is literally a nightmare clown and he does nightmare clown things. So if you're scared of clowns, this is not going to be for you. So it was just like, okay, well, that's silly. And then the other part that I did not like is just that Audra was being held accountable for things that just weren't her fault. Either it was like a complete freak accident or like there was no way she could have known better and she was still held accountable. And I was just like, no, I'm not loving that. And so I DNF'd that at page 88. The next one I DNF'd was The Strangely Beautiful Tale of Miss Percy Parker by Leanna, Renee, Hieber. It is the first book in the Strangely Beautiful series. I DNF'd this at page 51. And this was just not for me. It follows... So 20 years ago, 6 spirits inhabited these kids. And after that, they could see ghosts. They could exorcise them, everything. And at the time they were told there will be a 7th. You will know her when you see her. And when she shows up, the war is going to start. And of course, the 7th is Percy Parker, right? And that's the premise of this story, which is not a storyline where I'm like super intrigued by it. It's fine. It's just not what I gravitate towards. And the characters were fine. I just didn't love any of them. I didn't hate them. I just didn't love them. And then it was just like, this is Victorian London. And so it has very flowery language, which is totally fitting for the story. I just don't like it. Like, I am not a huge, I don't really like flowery language. And in this case, I did have to read sentences multiple times to make sure that I understood what was going on. There was a ton of description. And because of that, I felt like the text was actually holding me at a distance. And so I just couldn't get into it. And then, of course, lastly, there was a romance, and it was one of those destined by fate kind of romance tropes, which I just generally don't like. I don't think I've ever read one where I did like it, so I DNF'd it. But again, that one was really more just not for me rather than being actually bad. And then the next one that I DNF'd is Keeping It Real by Justina Robson, the first book in the Quantum Gravity series. This is a series where it is slightly in the future. A quantum bomb went off. It ripped the fabric between the different dimensions, and now there's elves and elementals and demons and stuff. Our main character is Lila Black. She is a cyborg, and she is an agent, and she has been assigned to protect an elf who's kind of a jerk, to be honest. And that is our main plot. It was an incredibly interesting concept. Unfortunately, the execution was not good. This, if you go into romance or onto Goodreads, everybody says this is a romance in disguise, and I agree. And furthermore, the disguise is not that great. It is hardcore, just a romance. Which is not what I was expecting, and not necessarily what I wanted from this story. Lila Black is supposed to be, this kick butt kind of mercenary, like spy, whatever. And she turns into this blushing schoolgirl around the elf, like, and I was just like, really? And he's a jerk. What are you doing? And then at page 51, she needed a spell done to restore, or to reverse her paralysis. And the elf is like, I'm going to do it. And so he's just like, hey, like, I have to touch your body all over for the spell. But also I'm going to enjoy groping you. I was like, oh, absolutely not. We are not doing that. And then on top of, that would have been enough right there. But on top of all that, the writing itself is terrible. It is trying to be really flowery, but it needed editing so badly because it's just confusing as to what the author is trying to say. And furthermore, it'll be like a super flowery paragraph, and then it'll have this really short utilitarian type sentence, and it's just super jarring. It doesn't flow. It's not good. This is one I actually DNF'd because it was just bad, not because it wasn't for me. And then lastly, I did not finish 3 Days to Dead by Kelly Medding, the first book in the Dreg City series. This is one I was actually very sad about. I was hoping this would be good. But it follows our main character of Evie Stone. She wakes up in a body that is not her own. It turns out that her mercenary partners are dead. She is being blamed for it. She was killed. Now she's resurrected, and she has 3 days to figure out what is going on. And I love that premise. And it suffered from some world building stuff. The most prominent was that if it's not your own body, of course you're going to have issues, right? Like, you're going to tell she's a fighter. She's going to tell her body to throw a punch. And it's a body that's not used to throwing a punch. And so there's going to be a disconnect. And I would totally expect that. And that's how it was in the beginning. And 50 pages later, if even that, she's suddenly totally in tune with her body. And I was like, no, and we were given no explanation. I did not appreciate that. And then there was a romance angle to it, and I was mad about that one because the guy confessed his feelings. And I was sitting there going, seriously? She died. She was resurrected. She has 3 days to figure out what happened, and then she's going to be dead again. You couldn't keep that to yourself? What is she supposed to do? Oh my gosh, right? And so I got really mad at that. And then lastly, I know that this is a series. I know that she lives at the end. There is absolutely no sense of urgency to this whole, she has to figure out at what happened in 3 days anyway. So I just was I think I made it to 125 or so for that book. So I gave it a good chunk, but in the end, I just could not do it. So that's it. That's it. Those are all 6 books that I DNF'd in the month of November. I am actually, like I said, I am very happy to have given all of these a shot. Most of them were just not for me. You should, if they are sound interesting to you, you should absolutely pick them up. I mean, other than the keeping it real, I can't recommend it to anybody, but like everything else just wasn't for me. If it sounds interesting to you, you should absolutely pick it up and let me know. And that's all I have for you guys. So let me know, do any of these actually interest you? Are you thinking about reading them? Because that would be, I would love to hear that. Let me know. But yeah, so until next time, guys, I hope you have happy reading and I will see you in the next video. Bye.